Hi there, and welcome to the 13 Days of Halloween with me, your host, Eddie Spuhghetti. Over the next couple days leading up to Halloween, I'm going to be discussing my favorite picks for films, TV shows, and TV specials, stuff that I love to watch around this time of year, and that I think you would be into as well. So with that, let's talk about my pick for this video. Halloween 2, 1981, directed by Rick Rosenthal. Written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, starring Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance, and Charles Cyphers. So without ruining anything of the first movie and this film, Halloween 2 is more of the night that Michael Myers came home. He is now on the run. He's killed a bunch of people in the first movie. Cops are in on it. They're trying to fucking find this lunatic. And thanks to a larger budget, there is more of the town to investigate. Now, Halloween 2 is better. For me, I find it is a better film than the first one. Not to say that the first one is bad or anything like that, but if I'm going to choose one to watch, I will go with the second movie. There's a lot of things going for it that I find is better than the first one. You got the score. The score is phenomenal in this movie, and they take a lot of tracks that were from the first film and really amp up the intensity thanks to synthesizers. One of the best examples is the track, The Shape Stalks Laurie. I think it's called The Shape Stalks Laurie again. In the first film, it was called The Shape Stalks Laurie. Compare those two tracks. Tell me which one sounds a lot more interesting to you. I feel like it's the second one from Halloween 2, obviously, because this one, it's just the synthesizer ramps its ass up and it sounds much more intense, and it works a lot better here at trying to really convey the intensity and the stakes that are really high going on with this lunatic Michael Myers. The atmosphere is also a lot more interesting here. Thanks to a larger budget, they are able to show us more aspects of Haddonfield. In the first movie, the budget was limited and you had a lot of neighborhood stuff. You had these homes of the people that these babysitters were taking care of their kids. And in this film, we expand a lot more into the town of Haddonfield. We get the sense of what else is going on in this little town, especially a hospital, which is where a majority of the action of this film takes place. It feels creepier to me. I think like the idea of the lunatic stalking your homes is one thing, but when it comes to a point where it's like this place that is technically supposed to be safe by professionals, like a hospital, and all of a sudden it's not. That's very cool. It's very much like Terminator, where they take Sarah to a police station and you'd think, well, there's no way this guy is going to get her in there. She's surrounded by a good crap ton of cops, but it doesn't really tend to be the case. And like in this movie, Jamie Lee Curtis's character is essentially brought to a hospital. She kind of remains there for the rest of the movie, and you think, okay, nothing bad is probably going to happen to her, but that's not the case. Slasher films at this point are a dime a dozen, cheaply made, thrown together, make probably a bit more than the budget because people just wanted to see them. And all of a sudden you have the sequel to perhaps the movie that kind of started that craze, and what do? Well, you got to bump it up with a lot more kills. You got to bump it up with more creative kills, and you got to show more of those kills in detail. And that's something that some people will critique over the first movie and kind of say, well, the first one did it in a very kind of highbrow, mature kind of way of not showing too much, and this one goes for the sense of showing a little bit more. I still find it's a little more reserved than you would think, especially to stuff around that time in comparison, but I still love this one over the first one. I don't know, there's just a lot of things in it where I look at it and I think, okay, they've done better in this area, and this area, and this area. And for me, it's just more entertaining. Going back to that idea of like how this movie shows more of the town of Haddonfield. In the first film, Michael is a threat to a bunch of people. He's a threat to the babysitters, he's a threat to Loomis, and to some of the cops who are aware of this. But it doesn't really feel as if 100% like he's a threat to the entire town. He's kind of a threat to like this one kind of neighborhood area. But in this movie, the sequel, it expands on that, and all of a sudden it's like, no, anybody in his path is fucked. I also love the way that Michael looks in this movie. He's a lot more roughed up. He's gone through a lot of shit. He's been damaged. He's been shot a number of times. Spoiler. But he looks way creepier in this movie. I don't know. There's something about the way that he looks, the roughed upness. There's a determination with the character of Michael in this movie. Now, the first one, yeah, there was a bit as well. And especially if you take in consideration the second movie and how they molded the relationship of Laurie and Michael, it changes the way that you look at the first film. First film essentially was a guy who got out of an insane asylum, broke out, Rick came across a bunch of people that intimidated him, and he decided to fucking destroy them and kill them. And in this movie, it's almost as if like he's gone into a Terminator type mode, where all of a sudden he's destined to kill this last person, this last victim that got away. She's the one that got away, and he won't give up. And that comes off a lot more scarier, I find. Again, it's the concept of how she's surrounded by all these people that should be protecting her, and there's no reason that he would be able to get to her in any kind of a sense, but yet he's able to. Like, he's a fucking machine in this movie, like a Terminator. But before we had satellite television, there would be a free preview for some of the specialty channels, and one of them was the Scream Network in Canada, where I grew up. And I would always go crazy for it. I would be like, oh my God, I can watch all this cool stuff for like 1 week kind of deal. And when it came to the final day of the preview, which was Halloween, they would run Halloween 1 and 2 back to back, because both those movies are following the exact same storyline back to back. So it made sense to run the two of them together. They would run Halloween right before like midnight. So they would run like Halloween at like, 10 o'clock or something like that. And then once midnight hit would be Halloween 2. Fortunately, the free preview would cut off at midnight, so I would never get to see Halloween 2 whatsoever. And it wasn't until many years later, I think, when I eventually found it on DVD and watched it, where I was like, holy fuck, I'd been missing out for such a long time. And the stupid friggin' cutoff of the pre-preview was just killer. Like, it destroyed me. But I'm very happy that I eventually got to see it, and it kind of resonated with me a lot more than the first one, and I found it a lot more creepier. I love the score better. I like the fact that Michael was more of like a machine monster kind of thing, unstoppable and a bigger threat to the entire town. It feels much more of a grander scale of like how much of this guy can fuck up this entire town, not just like a couple of people. Like, anybody is totally fucking susceptible to him killing them. It doesn't matter who you are. I just found that a lot more interesting than the first one. Halloween 2, more of the night that he came home. Not a bad sequel whatsoever. I think it's gotten a little bit of a bad press lately because of all these reboots and stuff, especially the new film, which rebooted the series and disregarded the second film. Nothing wrong with the second film. There are a lot of people who tend to say it's inferior to the first one, and that automatically just makes it a crappier movie in general. It is inferior to the first one. The first one is a big deal. It was a pioneer in slasher movies and horror films at the time, and also in independent cinema. And the second film tried to cash in on that, gave it a bigger budget, and feels more like an actual movie rather than an independent film. But I just so happen to enjoy it a bit more because the score is better. I just kind of like the atmosphere a lot better, personally. And if I had to choose between the two, if I'm forced to watch only one, I tend to go with the second one. Well, that does it for this video of the 13 Days of Halloween with me, your host, Eddie Spuhghetti. Thank you for joining me. I will be back shortly with another video discussing some of my favorite picks for stuff to watch around this time of year. But until then, we'll do lunch.